kami daripada kumpulan 3 akan mempersembahkan satu presentation mengenai monetary policy di negara China. Okay, saya Muhammad Hafiz bin Osman, P96237.
Saya Fairuz Syazad, P96244.
Saya Ahmad Ismail bin Yusof, P95243.
Inilah presentation kami.
Our assignment is on China monetary policy. Now we look at China economic facts. China's currency, they are using a renminbi. China's gross domestic product stood at 14.2 trillion USD. GDP per capita is at 8,826 USD. GDP growth is 6.9%. GNI per capita is $16,760, and GNI for China is $23.24 trillion. All figures is based on World Bank source. Now we go into the introduction of China market. China has a unique socialist open market economy. China's government retain the tight control on but remain open to free market forces. As a manufacturing and export-driven economy that receives tremendous amount of forex capital, China's currency forex rate also impact the country's money supply. People's Bank of China control the money supply in China. As a manufacturing export-driven economy, China runs a trade surplus. The Chinese exporters receive USD for their export but must pay local expenses and wages in local currency, yuan or renminbi. Due to huge supply of the US dollar and the demand for yuan, the rate of yuan can rise against the US dollar. Chinese export become costlier and lose their competitive price. The Bank of China intervenes to avoid the situation and keeps the rates lower through artificial measures. Now we look at the China monetary policy. They are separated into two. One is base money management and another one is credit management. On the base money management, they use open market operation, bank reserve, and central bank discount rate. They also use interest shielding or flow rate in an interest rate corridor. On the credit management, they use loan quota, differentiation, RRR, window guidance, and various guidelines. They also use benchmark deposit and lending rates and repo rates. The intermediate goal for China monetary policy is the monetary aggregate, whereby they control the monetary supply. They are using the M2 variable. Their policy objectives are: number one is growth and employment, inflation. Number two is inflation. Number three is external balance. Number four is financial stability, and the last one is reform. China monetary policy. The Bank of China doesn't have a single primary monetary policy like US Federal Reserve. The Bank of China instead they use multiple methods to control money supply and interest rate. Multiple objective similar to the government macroeconomics policy objective, depending on the needs of the economy. Multiple policy goals at a different time in the past. Inflation targeting monetary policy adopted by many other central banks due to simplicity and transparency. Price-based instruments such as interest rate, they're often adopted as the gold standard in monetary policy in advanced economies. This play only a supplementary role and are used in combination with quantitative and macroprudential tools. Now we look at the 10 to 15 years at China's economy outlook. As we can see here, China's money supply M2 keep on increasing from year 2000 until 2018. The GDP also increased from 1.21 in 2000 up until 12 trillion in 2017. But the growth rate in China is increased from 2000 until 2007, and it keep on in 2007 it decreased because of the global economic crisis, and it increased back in 2010. For the interest rate in the range of 2.7 until 3.2. The consumption for China keep on increasing from 2000 until 2017, and then it also increased the FDI net inflows from 2000 until 2017, except for in 2016. Now this is the China money supply for the last 15 years. The Chinese money supply in recent time has shown consistent growth. This is Chinese economy. The GDP for the last 10 years is also increased, and this is the exchange rate. The exchange rate decreased in 2010 until 2013, and in 2013 it keep on increasing until the same rate like 2009. Okay, now is a summarize of 10 to 15 years China outlook. The last 10 years have been very substantial change, the most remarkable of which has been the opening up the Chinese economy. And China major reform have increased China's market orientation, the increase in demand for Chinese currency, which stimulated commercial bank lending and finally increased the money supply. The money supply has risen significantly over the last 10 years. During the high and consistent growth rate, China managed the increasing money supply effectively while keeping the currency rate stable. So now we examine how China can do it. The first one is using the controlling forex rate. Number two is standardization. Number three, the reserve ratio. And number four is the discount rate. On the controlling forex rate, the Bank of China is to absorb the large inflow of foreign capital from China's trade plus. Bank of China purchases foreign currency from exporters and issue the currency in the local yuan, meaning that they buy the available excess of US dollar from the exporters and give them the required yuan. The Bank of China is free to publish any amount of local currency and have it exchanged for forex. This publishing of a local currency note ensures that forex rate remain fixed or in a tight range. This meaning that the renminbi must be lower in the value than dollar. Effectively, this intervention by the Bank of China creates a scarcity of US dollar which keep the USD rate higher. China hence accumulate USD as forex reserve. This is to ensure that Chinese export remain competitiveness. China tight control on the foreign money coming into the country which impact its money supply. China also buy the US Treasury bond. Okay, now we look at why China buy US Treasury bond. From the figure below, we can see here China is the biggest country that hold US bond, followed by Japan, Ireland, Brazil, and Switzerland. From the graph, we can see since March 2000, China holding rate of US Treasury bond keep on increasing from 71 million to 1,168 million in January 2018. China has approximately 3 trillion of US reserve as of February 2018. China needs to invest such a big stockpile to earn at least the risk-free rate. With trillion of US dollars, China has found the US Treasury securities to offer the safest investment destination for Chinese forex reserve. China making loans to the US and the US will keep buying China good. With this, China have good market for their product and US will pay a good economical prices for China good. If China offload some of their US debt, the excess supply of US dollar will reduce the dollar and increase the value of renminbi. Number two, a factor how China do it is on this sterilization. China will create some adverse consequences. The bank will increases the supply of local currency in domestic market, which increases the chance of high inflation. To cut back on excess money supply, the Bank of China sells the required amount of domestic currency bond, which take away the excess cash from the open markets. Number three is the reserve ratio. The commercial banks are required to keep a percentage of their total deposit amount with the central bank of the countries. If the central bank reduce the reserve ratio, the commercial bank keep less money as a reserve and have more money available to increase the money supply. Number four, the discount rate. If commercial bank borrows additional money from the central bank, they pay interest on the amount per applicable discount rate. The central bank can change the discount rate to increase or decrease the cost of such borrowing, which eventually impact the availability of money in the open market. Now we look at China and the financial crisis. The subprime mortgage in the US in the mid-2017, the United States subprime mortgage crisis was a nationwide financial crisis occurring between 2007 and 2010, and that contributed to US recession of December 2007 to June 2009. Because China is a major trading partner with the US, it impact to the China. What impact to the China is GDP, their trade, their current account balances, inflation rates, interest rate, unemployment rates, measure of consumer confidence, housing prices, tax revenue, and government expenditure. Now we look at the impact to the economy. You can see here GDP growth rate from 2006 until 2010 in quarter 1 2008 the rate is 10.6 and it keep on decreasing in quarter 2 2008 and it keep on increasing until 6.1 in quarter 1 2009. Now we look at the impact to the economy on the CPI. The CPI fell 1.2% year on year in March. This compared to a 1.6% decline in February, the first monthly fall since December 2002. China's producer price index PPI fell by 6% in the first quarter year on year, while retail sales grew 15% as China started to implement the stimulus package announced in November to counter the impact of the global slowdown. The impact on the export and import. China's export have been badly hit as the global financial crisis has intensified, particularly in manufacturing sector. China's export fell 7.5% in January 2009 and 25.7% in February 2009 compared to the corresponding months a year earlier. This was the worst performance in a decade. On the import side, the similar falls have occurred in imports. The positive Chinese trade balance throughout the whole of 2008 totaled nearly 300 billion USD. The balance in the initial month of 2009 has remained in substantial surplus despite falls in export as import also fell sharply. Now we look at the policy response. The policies toward exchange rate and reserve management. China also focused on the policies to stimulate the domestic market to offset the weakening trade performance. China also introduced the stimulus packages and interest rate policies. These policies to underpin the domestic housing market. China also introduced the exchange rate policy. With its large reserve, China should be able to maintain exchange rate stability if that remains an objective of the policy. The appreciation of renminbi would make the domestic market more attractive. This will help to shift towards greater reliance on the domestic market. The reduced further accumulation of foreign reserve representing accumulation of paper by China in return for good export. However, this policy response would potentially cause substantially further distress for exporting firms. China also introduced mixed policy. The management of China reserve is also a key part of the policy mix. The reserve can be used to stabilize the renminbi exchange rate. China also provides some degree of stability to the global economy by loan to the foreign government or foreign financial institution, or even China purchase of foreign asset at depressed prices. But if China seek to dispose of its reserve too quickly, there could be a fall in the US dollar and newly global instability. If China does not and the US dollar fall, and China will suffer capital losses. Thank you.
Okay, itulah presentation kami. Jika dapat apa-apa soalan mengenai presentation tadi, bolehlah email kepada kami. Sekian, terima kasih.